Alright, so you probably know what's up by now. We're looking at John and Jane, Phil once again, blah, blah, blah. However, we have a certified bitch who left a comment on my video complaining about how trash my videos are. He right though, so now I'm gonna try and put more effort into editing these. But fuck you, because now I need to work more.
Working on your car?
I can't hear you.
Can you shut it off?
I can't hear you because the car's on.
What's in the box?
Oh, you know, my car's leftover parts. I always have a few of them left over when I'm done working on it.
Parts you don't need?
Pretty sure.
Are you sure you don't need these? Or you know this?
Not really, but I started the engine and it runs without this junk.
You know, all this reminds me about what our textbook says about vestigial structures. Can you help me grab it out of my backpack? How do you not know what's in your car? Something wrong?
No, but why don't you look it up for us?
Oh, yeah, right. Okay. Where's it? Oh, there it is right there. Vestigial structures are inherited from ancestors, but have lost much or all of their original function due to different selection pressures acting on the descendant.
So they're saying that animals and people have leftovers in their bodies that once served a function in our evolutionary ancestors? Hey, just like the parts for my car.
Not really. They're trying to draw an analogy here between some structures in the human body that we once thought were vestigial, and how parts of his car can also serve a function that he didn't know. Therefore, vestigial structures can't prove evolution. The fundamental flaw with this approach is that just because you can demonstrate some organs to have function, doesn't mean all organs we once thought were vestigial have function, as I'll demonstrate later on.
Exactly. The example they give here is the dolphin's hip bones.
They're saying its ancestor used to walk on land, but once the dolphin evolved to live in water, it has useless leftover hip bones.
What's funny is scientists recently discovered that marine animals, like whales, need these bones during mating season.
Yes, this is called an exaptation, like an adaptation, but instead of adapting something new, you take something that's already there and repurpose it. You can kind of think of it as Mother Nature's version of recycling. Once a structure becomes vestigial, like marine hip bones, a creature that uses those bones in a valuable way is more likely to survive than a creature that doesn't, so those exaptations become naturally selected for.
The study was published in a 2014 article in the science journal Evolution.
Wait. The name of the journal is Evolution.
Yep.
The one that claims they've discovered a purpose for these bones, which goes against the whole idea that these bones are mere evolutionary leftovers.
There's the definition of irony, isn't it?
No, it's not, and try not to be so smug about something you don't understand. What is ironic is that creationists always complain about how, oh, you can't get published if you go against the evolutionary narrative, guys, and then mention that something that went against what we thought to be true was published in a massive peer-reviewed secular journal. That's the whole point of science. We learn and we revise. Just because you don't understand that doesn't make me wrong. It just makes you stupid.
So, in the textbook, they call them useless, but in reality, these bones help the dolphin reproduce and survive.
Yep. I don't know when that textbook was written, or by who, but generally peer-reviewed journals are better sources of information than textbooks because the journals stay updated with the new publishings.
Exactly. And they say the same thing about humans.
That we have dolphin hips?
Not exactly, but close. They point out that our coccyx, the tailbone, is left over from when we had tails.
They think we used to have tails?
Yeah, but it's just the end of our backbone. I mean, it has to end somewhere, right?
Yes, but the specific size, shape, and formation is very indicative as to where it came from.
True. It's also the anchor for a bunch of muscles, right?
Yes. Tiny muscles, tendons, and ligaments connect to it, and it supports something called the pelvic diaphragm. This whole system holds a bunch of muscles and organs in place, like the bladder.
They're acting as if this is necessary for any of it to function. There's a kind of surgery called a coccygectomy in which the tailbone in question is removed. People who experience this surgery usually suffer little to no side effects as a direct result of the coccyx being removed. So yes, it is an anchor point for a couple muscles and such things, but to act as if it's important is either a display of malicious deception or ignorance.
So what other things did they say are leftovers?
The tonsils.
Of course. Lots of people had their tonsils removed. Great way to get ice cream for dinner.
Do you seriously let them cut out your tonsils just so you can have ice cream?
Well, it depends on what kind of ice cream we're talking about here. Okay, not really, but people survive just fine without tonsils, right?
Studies now show that in some cases, removing your tonsils can be worse in the long run, and especially for young children.
So what's their purpose?
Tonsils are placed at the back of the throat so they trap germs when we breathe. Proteins called antibodies produced by immune cells in the tonsils help kill germs and prevent throat and lung infections. They actually manufacture antibodies against disease. They're basically the first line of defense against inhaled or ingested viruses.
So what about the appendix? It's thought to be vestigial, right? I'm not even sure I know what it is.
It's a tube-shaped sac attached to the lower end of the large intestine. It's part of your digestive system, and
Okay, enough said. But they also have purpose?
Yes, it's the storehouse for beneficial bacteria. When you fight an intestinal disease, your body gets rid of bacteria, both good and bad. But then the appendix can quickly resupply your system with good bacteria.
Sounds pretty helpful.
Yep. It also plays a role in our body's immune system, especially when we're younger.
Sounds pretty important.
It can be in some cases. However, I should do well to remind the viewer what I said earlier. You can't just say, this has function, therefore all vestigial structures have function.
Charles Darwin thought vestigial structures were a winning argument for evolution.
And he believed there were lots of vestigial structures?
Yeah, and a German anatomist by the name of Robert Wiedersheim made a list of 86 vestigial structures in the human body. And later, evolutionists expanded the list to about 180. But modern science has now shown that every one of them has a purpose.
Well, that's just not true. I can name 2 vestigial structures in humans right now, and your entire argument is collapsed. Given that I find it fun to tear other people's arguments to shreds,
Let's just jump into. 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 Let's just jump into.
the first is Goosebumps. We have no use for Goosebumps. They are entirely functionless. However, in our ancestors and modern-day apes and monkeys, this is technically called a piloerection and makes the hair stand up straighter, making the ape appear larger than it was and scaring off predators. As we became less hairy, there was no reason for Goosebumps to be selected out of the gene pool, so they remain, although functionless. The second one is a little cooler. It's not a vestigial organ, it's a vestigial molecule. There's a gene in some animals that allows them to synthesize vitamin C. However, while humans have this gene, it's been deactivated because we no longer need to synthesize vitamin C when we get so much of it from our diet. The gene in question produces L-gulonolactone oxidase, GULO for short, which is an enzyme that catalyzes some reactions that end up with ascorbic acid, aka vitamin C. This gene has been turned into a pseudogene, so while the code is still there in our DNA, we don't use it at all. Now, I could mention more, like the palmar-grasp reflex, but I think you get the point. Their argument has been crumbled, and we can all rest easy, knowing that these bumbling idiots still haven't gotten anything right.
So, they didn't know about these organs' functions in the body?
No, they assumed that since people could survive without them, that these were totally useless. Then they reasoned in a circle, arguing that since they were useless leftovers of an evolutionary past, they demonstrate our evolutionary past.
So, reasoning in a circle is bad.
Yeah. It's when we assume our conclusion, then use that assumption to prove our conclusion. It's crazy.
Peak irony, given that religious folk often try to use the Bible to prove the Bible.
So, what do modern evolutionists say about these organs, now that science has discovered that every one of them have functions after all?
They now claim that vestigial organs can have functions after all, and those functions may have evolved after the organ spent time being useless.
Exactly what I was saying about exaptations. If you don't understand science, don't make that my problem.
Wow, talk about imagination.
If you want to say evolutionary biologists are just imagining stuff, don't then turn around and say that there's an undetectable, unprovable God who watches over me day and night.
It's kind of sad that they think we're made up of useless parts.
Why? In what way does that make anything better or worse? I'm still me, and you're still you.
Instead of acknowledging the design by Jesus, the Creator. It kind of reminds me of Psalm 139:14.
Yeah, it says, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well.
Humans suck. Things that come to mind that need massive improvement are the laryngeal nerve, which goes all the way below the heart only to come back up, the fact that humans eat and breathe through the same hole, the lack of built-in pockets, and the list goes on. Any engineer would be appalled at the inefficiency of the human body. You would submit this design for review and get fired on the spot. They go on to make a dumb analogy about car parts. I'll spare you the pain. They're wrong, that's all you need to know. Thanks for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, please like and subscribe, and feel free to comment any feedback you have. Questions, thoughts, challenges, really whatever you feel like, as long as it stays positive or constructive. Next episode, we'll be looking at their lesson on adaptation. I think I've seen a little bit of this episode a while ago. If my memory serves me well, it's a real shit show, so you should enjoy it. See ya.